So you want to become a cop? A pig? A copper? Hot fuzz blah blah blah.
Yes, I do diddly do, sir.
All right then. I suppose I'm willing to listen. Do you have any experience?
Yes. Word to the wise, don't piss me off. One time, I remember back in Philadelphia, we'd just been eating cheesesteak because that was our only source of entertainment back then, so we were all horrifically overweight. So overweight that one of us walking through a door looked like a Three Stooges act. So anyway, we'd just seen on TV that there'd been a robbery somewhere and wanted to do something about it. We all piled into Handy Mac's luxury Cadillac. The suspension buckled immediately. We got out and began roaming up and down the streets until we saw a group of about 15 shady-looking types. There were 20 of us, so we fancied our chances until we noticed that we'd lost 9 to heart failure while we were roaming. These were some very shady-looking characters. One of them was even wearing a shirt and jacket, but no tie. You'd have to see it to believe it. No tie at all. I digress.
Yes, you do.
So anyway, we lumbered across the road to the shady characters. By the time we'd crossed the road, we'd lost 2 more to heart failure, and it was getting dark. It became apparent that we'd have to do this between meals. The next day, we awoke from our gargantuan slumber, and began preparing a huge feast, which would keep us full long enough to bring justice to the streets by destroying those shady characters. Many moons later, the meal was finished, and we began to gorge. 13 years later, we had ingested the feast, and were ready to take to the streets. An added benefit of the great feast was that, due to taking on so much mass, several of us spawned new life forms out of our fat alone, so we were up to 21 in numbers. After first getting stuck in some tight hangar doors, we made our way outside, and began our search. By then it was the 80s, a shady time for all those concerned, I think you'll agree. The first time we saw just how much things had changed was when we saw a ZZ Top music video. We lost 2 to heart failure there and then. The remaining 19 of us proceeded to the spot where we'd last seen those shady characters. Now, there was a 16th, a priest. A truly terrifying sight to behold. He thought he was wearing a tie, but he wasn't. By now we were peckish, and they were still across the road, so we got out of there, losing 3 more to heart failure as we gradually fled towards a playground for a snack. It was going to be 16 versus 16 at best. Once we reached the playground, we inhaled some playing children. And their parents. And a slide. Our energy replenished, we headed back to the spot where those shady characters had been loitering. By now a day had gone by, not a single one was wearing a tie, and they were all on their knees, apart from the priest. He stood above them, reading from a book about some nonsense. Enough was enough. It was time to put a stop to this madness, although by that time, we had no idea why. We crossed the road. By the time we were on the other side of the road, we'd gone mad with hunger, but we held it together. We had to. The onslaught began. The other 15 began devouring those tieless monsters, whereas I went straight for that damned priest. As my comrades wrestled over scraps, the priest's adopted children arrived to bring him an apple. Needless to say, the apple was eaten by me. And so were the children. But first there was a more pressing matter at hand, pressing the priest's head into the ground with my hand in front of the children. Then eating the children. I turned and stood on the headless priest's corpse, turning my head to my corpulent comrades. We stood, triumphantly, 18 deaths and only 1 corpse. But someone would eat him eventually. Then, to our horror, we saw that it had all been caught on film. There was a man with crutches holding a camera in his mouth. We considered chasing him, but by then he was over 5 feet away. It was hopeless. Once the authorities had designed a prison huge enough to contain us, the police came to arrest us. We would have fought back, but they were dressed as salad. 3 of us died of heart failure just through seeing them. They loaded us into the special holding vehicle, named the Leviathan, and we were imprisoned for 25 years. Then, 5 minutes ago, you released me.
Usually I'd put you on a 6-month training session to prove you were up to the job, but with the things you've done, that wouldn't be appropriate. Welcome to the force, officer.
I'm hungry.